On this week's show, we review last week's tough loss from the Georgia Southern football team to New Hampshire and look ahead to what the Eagles may do in the future after a bye week. All that and more as we welcome you inside the Eagles' nest. Welcome inside the Eagles' Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, we thought we had a home game. It was moved to Birmingham. We thought we might have maybe not an easy win, but a win probably, and that didn't happen either. It's kind of frustrating. You go all the way to Birmingham after Hurricane Irma, and then kind of laid an egg there in Birmingham. Let's first of all, talk about your thoughts of moving the game, and did that have any bearing on what ended up happening on the field?
I mean, it's tough to say. Who knows exactly what might have gone differently if the game had been played at Paulson Stadium, but you also can't take away the fact that New Hampshire was every bit as inconvenienced as Georgia Southern was. It's one thing to get on a bus, it's just sitting there already and drive out of your way to go play a game. It's another to take away flight plans, make new flight plans, make a new hotel reservation in a city that's filling up with people trying to get away from the storm. So you definitely can't use that as an excuse for Georgia Southern. In the end, they let 11 guys on the field for both sides. The field's the same size. The point of the game's the same. And unfortunately for the Eagles, the result was the same as week one. All
right, well, getting into the reasons for the loss then, offensively did not score until the 6-minute mark of the fourth quarter, so you went 7.5 quarters pretty much without really doing much offensively. They turned the ball over twice in the game, sputtered on offense other than that, missed a field goal. You've got to say things are looking pretty bad, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, offensively there were maybe a few bright spots. They definitely moved the ball better than they did against Auburn, but that was to be assumed with an FCS team playing, and they were able to get the yardage. They were able to move the chains. The third down conversions were better, but the few things that the team tried to take away from the Auburn game, protecting the ball, winning the turnover battle, those are the things that didn't happen against New Hampshire, and when they went south, they did so at the worst possible times. You had 2 turnovers, a fumble, and an interception, both of those coming in New Hampshire territory. And then you had a couple of scoring drives that looked like they could have been touchdowns. Instead, penalties kind of kill the drive. They take them out of contention for a touchdown. One turns into one of those turnovers. Another turns into a missed field goal. So no telling how many points were taken off the board by maybe doing the little things right to get more yardage, but doing the big things wrong, taking away a chance to really do some damage on the scoreboard.
And the defense, which came out of the gates pretty strong against Auburn, came out of the gates pretty flat against New Hampshire. You give up 22 points. Of course, your offense doesn't help you much because they didn't get any points on the board. But a little shocking to see New Hampshire move the ball like they did in the first half. Of course, the second half was a little different, and the Eagles got back to playing what we had thought on defense.
And we spent last week talking about New Hampshire and how they're a strong team. And I think you saw a lot of what you saw from Georgia Southern when they were an FCS team. They were able to line up and go your top 11 versus Georgia Southern's top 11, and a lot of times that talent matches up for a while, ends up wearing down later in the game. Unfortunately for Georgia Southern, they weren't able to do enough offensively to take advantage of it when that offense got a little tired for New Hampshire in the second half. When Georgia Southern figured them out a little bit, it seemed like New Hampshire was kind of out of tricks to pull to be able to get big chunks of yardage, but when they're sitting there with a 22-0 lead midway through the third quarter, they really didn't have to do that much more than just sit on the ball and root for the clock to run out.
Well, the students not in school until coming up on Monday. We weren't able to talk to anybody this week because of the way they were gone, and then I guess they're not going to be around much this week. But we did get a chance to talk with Coach Summers after the game about what happened there in the New Hampshire game.
Hey, Miss Thompson, everything's fine. It's going to be no problem. I'll have you done in a few minutes.
My name is Paisley Nordhoff, part owner of Complete Car Care, and I want you to come see me.
Well, Mike, now comes the questions of what do you do to fix this? It seems to me like it's a little bit more than just tweaking something. I would say they've got the bye week comes at a good time. A lot of times, you want to get that taste out of your mouth and get back, but this is more than just, let's tweak this or that. I don't know. Do you give another quarterback an opportunity? You got a couple in there. You brought Cato in, a junior college transfer. He's played some college games before. You got LeBaron Anthony there, no relation. He's there and he's played in a game. Maybe wasn't the greatest outcome there, but you've got a couple guys. I don't know that you put it all on Shai Werts. The offensive line still doesn't look like they're opening too many holes, and we know Wesley Fields and L.A. Ransby are good running backs. Do you do major overhauls or as much as you can, or is it just some tweaking or something like that? Because I would say you've got the off week, you're playing Indiana, nobody expects you to win. Maybe you throw some things out there that you're, some experimental things. And then you got Arkansas State, and you really need to turn it around by then.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think that it definitely needs to be more than a tweak. A tweak would be if you only scored 2 or 3 touchdowns against New Hampshire and you wanted to do better. But that's not what we've seen. We've seen the offense either not being able to get going at all like they did in week 1 or hampering themselves with crippling plays like they did in week 2. I do think that just the nature of running the option, it sometimes is little things that can make the big differences. You see on the first turnover, a case of maybe just an inexperienced freshman quarterback waiting a little bit too long to make a decision to pitch it, and what could turn into just a minor mishap, a loss of a yard or two in a more traditional offense with a bad handoff or something. It leads to the ball on the ground. It leads to a drive just stopping in its tracks. It leads to momentum for New Hampshire going right down the field, and as Coach Summers put it, a 14-point swing when you thought you'd be up 7-0. So I think that what really needs to be done is a lot of film work. They need to figure out where this offense just isn't getting aggressive, where it's not going downhill. Seems to me like things are going just a little bit too slowly. We saw that a lot last year, and it was concerning because you had a lot of experience running it. Now, maybe you expect or anticipate that it might take a while to flesh out, but when you look up and it's 0-2, 2 weeks into the season, not a whole lot of patience for those watching the games.
So again, do you think there's any chance of a switch at quarterback? Again, not saying that Shai Werts is the problem. Do you think there's any chance that they change any blocking schemes from the offensive line? Do you think they might go under center? Are any of those things on the table?
I think that maybe not knowing exactly what's in the playbook for the offensive line, maybe trying some new things, some different design plays. My biggest concern would be getting those runners going downhill with the ball. Too many pitches where a guy's still going to the sideline, doesn't have a chance to get some yardage. I don't know if that's a blocking thing or an execution thing coming out of the backfield. As far as the quarterback situation goes, I would bet my money that Shai Werts is the starter against Indiana. If you start to see bad decisions, bad pitches, bad throws, you do eventually have to look elsewhere on the team. You've got a total of 4 quarterbacks, but I really think that what this offense really needs is some confidence, but that's kind of up to them at this point. They've got to make a big play before they can get confidence. It's kind of a negative feedback loop at the moment.
All right, well, we do know Georgia Southern has a bye week coming up this week, and then they're on the road for Indiana. That game has been scheduled for a 3:30 kickoff there in Bloomington, so that's the next up for the Georgia Southern Eagles, and then they come back for the midweek game with Arkansas State on a Wednesday night. Other sports going on right now, you got the soccer teams, you've got volleyball. I believe most of them came with Georgia Southern to Birmingham, actually, and I think they all came back Sunday night or Monday.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty with Hurricane Irma, not knowing exactly where it was going to go, figuring that Statesboro was going to get at least a little bit of damage because of it, so they took everybody out of town, just making sure that they could get to their next games, that they weren't trapped in Statesboro if things had been worse. Luckily, they weren't for Statesboro, but they're all back now, and you've got the soccer teams ready to open up Sun Belt play, both of them taking on Coastal Carolina. The men are hosting on Saturday, the women going to Conway, South Carolina on Friday night. A couple of tough openers for them. For volleyball, unfortunately, their second home tournament of the season was supposed to be last weekend. That one a total wash. Now they go to Clemson for one more preseason tournament, and also golf getting into it.
All right, we got golf and everyone else back in action.
Women's golf headed to the Little Apple of Manhattan, Kansas for Kansas State.
Quite a trip, not quite as far as you were mentioning going to Washington. Who was that? The
Women's soccer team. And then men's golf was supposed to start last weekend playing at Kiowa. That unfortunately also washed out due to the hurricane. They'll be off this weekend. They'll officially start their fall season next weekend.
All right, well, that'll wrap things up for now. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.